I call this Onslow County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. We'll begin with a prayer tonight and then follow with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Manager.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for all that you've given us. We thank you for our national heritage, dear Lord, and the heritage of Onslow County. Lord, we ask you to please bless those around our nation that are in harm's way tonight, in Houston and other places. Lord, please bless our first responders and our military that's protecting our freedom. This evening, as we engage in the business of this county, I ask your blessings and wisdom upon the Board of County Commissioners. Please lead them, guide them, and direct them, Lord, and please continue to bless Onslow County. For it is in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Cotton. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If you have not turned your cell phones off, please do so. The board affords the public two opportunities to speak at each meeting. The first is a 3-minute segment in the beginning of the meeting, and you should keep your comments in conjunction with tonight's agenda. The second opportunity is a 5-minute opportunity, and you can speak on anything that the board has authority over. We asked you to sign up in the back of the room. Take a moment to read over the rules of procedures. When you come forward, if the clerk does not have your name and address correctly, please correct it. Address your comments to the board in its entirety. Please keep your comments civil and respectful. No audience participation is needed. Each individual is afforded the opportunity to speak in their respective category, and the board reserves the right to respond at commissioners' comments. We ask that no endorsement of candidacy or of business. If at this time we need a motion to adopt the agenda. So moved. The second?
Second.
All in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Agenda is adopted. All in favor of the consent agenda? Or can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of adopting the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
This is our first 3-minute segment. Mr. Manager, is anyone signed up?
Madam Chair, there's no one signed up for the first public comment period.
Okay. Mr. Manager, proceed with items 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 4 is presentations. The first is a proclamation. This time I'll read the proclamation. State of North Carolina, County of Onslow, in recognition of President Washington's Southern Tour. Whereas in 1789, shortly after taking office as first President of the United States, President Washington began plans to visit every state for the purpose of determining, and I quote, the temper and disposition of the inhabitants toward the new government, end quote. In late March of 1791, President Washington left from Virginia and began his journey southward. And whereas President Washington arrived in Onslow County on Saturday, April 23rd, 1791, and according to his diary entry, he breakfasted at one Everett's 12 miles, baited at a Mr. Foy's 12 miles farther, and lodged at one Sage's 20 miles, all in different houses. And whereas, although a brief entry, President Washington's stop in Onslow County is nonetheless an important historical event as he traveled across the countryside, seeing a landscape not unfamiliar to those traveling on Highway 17 South today. And whereas commemorations are being conducted across the region in recognition of the 225th anniversary of President George Washington's Southern Tour. And whereas the Onslow County Museum will feature this journey later this year in a special changing exhibit entitled, You Are Here, A History of Travel in Onslow County. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Onslow County Board of Commissioners would like to recognize the 225th anniversary of President George Washington's Southern Tour and subsequent stop in Onslow County on April 23, 1791, and thank the Onslow County Museum and Onslow County Historical Society for preserving and sharing the history of Onslow County. Presented this 18th day of April 2016. Representatives of the Onslow County Historical Society and Onslow County Museum will accept the proclamation. The chairman requests that Commissioner Jack Bright present the proclamation. Commissioner Bright.
Good evening. What a pleasure this is to present this proclamation with our General George Washington, that was then later our president, our first president that came through Onslow County in 1791. And I did a little bit of research and found out the places that he stopped. The first two places he stopped was eating breakfast, and then he stopped at another house and had lunch, and then he moved on down to Sage's Lodge, which he stopped and stayed overnight. And Sage's Lodge is located now at, of course there's nothing there now, but 17 South and Highway 172, where that intersects. That's where Sage's Lodge was. It was owned by Robert Sage Sr., and that's where he spent the night. And then he traveled on a little bit further down the road and ate lunch at a big old oak tree there in Hampstead and Pender County. That oak tree is still standing there today. It's got a monument underneath of it that commemorates that. And if you're ever down towards Hampstead and you see that big oak tree and a little granite marble plaque, that's where he actually sat down and ate lunch that day, and he had to make a decision where he wanted ham or sausage. And I know that because my mama told me so. But I didn't take her word for it. That's what it says also in the history books and his diary. But it gives me great pleasure to present this proclamation to the Historical Society and our museum. Thank you for being here. Please step up here and have a few words.
Thank you.
She's never short on words.
Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners, we thank you for this recognition of our most illustrious visitor. We have brought us some very special guests tonight, Mr. Dennis Jones with the Onslow County Historical Society, and the President of the Historical Society, Mr. Floyd Parker. And so, Mr. Jones, did you have anything to offer about the meeting that was held yesterday? Because this is a region-wide commemoration.
Good evening. Yesterday afternoon in New Bern, there were several eastern North Carolina counties that were represented at a special gathering at Broad Street Christian Church, actually. It was sponsored by the Family History Society of Eastern North Carolina. But basically, since the beginning of April, you have a series of the counties from Virginia all the way down to Brunswick County that are celebrating. And it just so happens that this year, April the 23rd is on a Saturday, just like it was back in 1791, when President Washington stopped at the Richlands Plantation and ate with the Averets, which we know here in Onslow County now as the Everett family. And then he came on down just a short distance to crossing Southwest and Hicks Run and ate with Captain James Foy. And we have many of those descendants. In fact, Lisa here is descended from Captain James Foy. And then as Commissioner Bright shared with us, he did stop at Sage's Ordinary, which is right near the county line. But this is part of a series of celebrations that are going on throughout the month of April here in North Carolina. And we're just so happy that the commissioners were supportive of this endeavor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item 5 is public hearings. 2 public hearings are scheduled during this meeting. The first is rezoning case LREZ 2016-9. During both of these public hearings, we'll follow our typical order of proceedings. First, we'll have a staff introduction by Planning and Development Director Mr. Ben Warren, followed by the public hearing itself. At the public hearing, we'll have an applicant statement if any representatives of the applicant or the applicant themselves are present. After that, members of the public are invited to speak. After everyone has spoken, we'll close the public hearing, and the item would then be available for commissioner discussion. Commissioner discussion would include any questions that would be posed to the applicant's representatives, or members of the public. At this time, we'll begin with LREZ 2016-9. Mr. Warren, will you please give a staff introduction?
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Good evening, Madam Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and Commissioners. The first rezoning case that we have for your consideration is LREZ 2016-0009, and it's a request to rezone property from R20 to RA. The property owner is Kings Bay Properties, LLC, and there's 30 parcels that are actually included in the rezoning request for a total acreage of approximately 85.82 acres. Portions of 27 of those parcels are located in a regulated floodplain, and 24 lots, or portions of 24 lots, are located in a COBRA zone. COBRA zone being a little bit different than a typical floodplain area in that it's actually regulated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as those are known as critical habitat areas for certain wildlife species. Properties are located, a portion of the properties along the shoreline are located in areas that are likely for presence of wetlands. Onslow has a 6-inch water line that's available from Harbor Point Road, but at this point there would be further evaluation necessary to ensure that they would be able to meet the extension requirements to serve these properties. There is no sewer available to serve the properties, and Turkey Creek Volunteer Fire Department would provide fire service. Now, the property is primarily accessed from Harbor Point Road, but there are no traffic counts available for Harbor Point Road. But Harbor Point Road does intersect with Turkey Point Road, which has an average annual daily traffic count of 1,300 vehicle trips per day, and Turkey Point Road intersects with Old Folkestone Road, which has an average annual daily traffic count of 4,900 vehicle trips per day. And both of these roads have a carrying capacity of 12,000 vehicle trips per day. If we take a look at the property, it's just a zoomed out view, and you can see the area that is on the shoreline or waterfront areas, or the area that we mentioned where the COBRA zone and some of the floodplain and wetland areas are. So we're moving a little bit closer to look at some of the surrounding zoning in the area. As you can see, the property is immediately adjacent to the west, or currently zoned RA, and then the areas in the surrounding area are more of a high-density residential in nature. And as we take a look at the aerial view, you can see just to the west is the existing Point Harbor campground, and then outside of that it's primarily vacant forest land that surrounds the rezoning site. And this is a view of the rezoning site coming into the properties along Harbor Point Road. Another view of the rezoning parcel is from Ocracoke Road, and Ocracoke Road is an existing road that provides access to all 30 parcels. And then a final view of the rezoning parcels from Moortalk Lane, and this is more on the southwestern side of the rezoning sites. If we look at the district comparison between the two, the R20 residential district is primarily intended for low-density, single-family type residential development, has a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet and a maximum density of 2 dwelling units per acre, and allows 30 different uses. A complete list is available in your packet, but it's primarily uses that are residential in nature or supporting uses such as campgrounds and other low-scale supporting residential uses. As compared to the RA zoning district, and there again, it's really designed for a low-density single-family and agricultural type uses, 20,000 square feet minimum lot size with no maximum density, and 152 permitted uses. And of those uses, a mixture of residential, agricultural, and then kind of a community business type uses that really support residential. The future land use map really has the property split, a combination of conservation along the waterfront, moving into HG, which is a community growth area, more of a low to medium density residential. And you can see some of the existing subdivisions or lot breakouts here is consistent with the recommended land uses. Now, the requested RA zoning district itself is not listed as a compatible district for either the community growth area or the conservation districts. However, when you look at the properties, And the absence of sewer and the street access and limited water availability, it really factors out the majority of the non-residential uses that would be allowed in an RA zoning district, and really doesn't lend itself to much more than low-density residential or campground-type uses, those types of things. And those types of uses would be consistent with the policies and recommendations of the future land use plan. As far as reasonableness and public interest, as we saw from the vicinity map, there is existing RA zoning in the area, and the uses that would be allowed based off of the water and sewer and street connectivity are similar to uses that are already in existence in the surrounding area. So staff recommendation, based upon the policies and recommendations of the future land use plan and the limitations of the available utilities, staff did recommend approval of the rezoning request. And additionally, the planning board has reviewed this request and also made a unanimous recommendation for approval. Then I'll turn it over to Mr. Hudson for the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. At this time, I'll open the public hearing on rezoning case LREZ 2016-9. First, we'll hear from the applicant. Is there any member of the applicant or applicant's party here? Please approach the podium, state your name and your relationship to the applicant, please.
My name is Barden Lanier, and I represent the applicant of Kings Bay. We did the surveying and the layout for this property here. The property, the 83 acres that we're asking for rezoning, for the purpose of extending the phase 3 of the campground. The property owners of the campground and all of us 83 acres we're requesting are the same. And the proposed use for the phase 3 of the campground would be in the larger open area. There's no plans to change anything with those lots. Those lots averages about 2 acres each. There's about almost 50 acres of lots in there. And they're undeveloped lots. There's 4 houses located on parcels in there. With that, if you have any questions, if I can try to answer any question you might have.
Mr. Lanier, will you be available after the public hearing for questions from the commissioners?
I will.
Thank you. That concludes the applicant's statement. There are no other individuals signed up for the public hearing. If there's any member of the audience that would like to speak regarding this case, LREZ 2016-9, please come to the podium at this time. Once again, if there's anyone that would like to speak that did not have a chance to sign up regarding LREZ 2016-9, please come to the podium at this time. Madam Chair, with no other individuals signed up on the sheet and no other individuals coming forward, the public hearing is hereby closed. This item is available for commissioner discussion and possible action.
Approve the rezoning.
Second.
Discussion. I would like to ask Mr. Warren, is that a private road or is that a dedicated road that cuts down through there? I can't recall what you called the road name, Orrin?
Yes, ma'am. The Harbor Point Road would be a private access.
So it is a private road? Okay.
That's on Turkey Creek, ain't it?
Yes, sir. It comes off Turkey Creek Road.
Mr. Warren, are there restrictions from Diener on the waterfront property there?
Yes, ma'am. There will be some restrictions there. There's also restrictions because those areas being in a floodplain and also the Cobra Zone. So as you get along the shoreline, especially the Cobra Zone area, there are pretty serious limitations that would be in place for any type of future development.
Okay, so they'll have to comply with any of those regulations before they can develop it further?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Warren or Mr. Lanier or anyone? I hear no further questions. All in favor say aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Item 5B, rezoning case LCZ 2016-14. Mr. Warren, please give a staff overview of this item.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hudson. The second rezoning request that we have for your consideration is to rezone property from rural agricultural to highway business conditional zoning. The property owner is Mr. Bobby Morton, and this rezoning includes two parcels, parcel 332-232 and parcel 332-234, for a combined acreage of 6.76 acres. There's no identified floodplain on the properties. However, there is a presence or a likelihood of wetlands along the western border of the property, which that western border is composed of an existing stream. Onslow has a 12-inch water line that runs along Burgaw Highway, and the city of Jacksonville has a 6-inch force main along Burgaw Highway and Old Maplehurst Road that will be providing sewer service to the property. Southwest Volunteer Fire Department would provide fire service. And we look at the two streets, Burgaw Highway providing access from the north, has an average daily traffic count of 18,000 vehicle trips per day, and Old Maplehurst Road, which has an average annual daily traffic count of 7,500 vehicle trips per day. Both of these roads, being two-lane highways, would have a traffic capacity of approximately 12,000 vehicle trips per day. Now, with Burgaw Highway exceeding that capacity, there are traffic improvements planned for Burgaw Highway that would assist with that carrying capacity and address the existing traffic congestion issues that we have now and any foreseeable issues as well. And there are also traffic improvements planned for Old Maplehurst Road as well. Schools providing service to the property would be Blue Creek Elementary, Southwest Middle, and Southwest High, with Blue Creek Elementary and Southwest High currently under capacity, and Southwest Middle is currently over capacity for this existing school year. We'll take a zoomed out look at the property and see it's right there on the southwest corner of Burgaw Highway and Old Maplehurst Road. Excuse me. And looking at the existing zoning surrounding the property, so the majority of the properties at the node or the intersection of Burgaw Highway and Old Maplehurst are currently zoned highway business, making up that commercial node, and surrounding that in the outlying area is existing RA zoning. And as we look at the zoomed in aerial view, just to the north of the rezoning site is an existing church. At the corner of Old Maplehurst and Burgaw Highway, we have an existing service station. We have another gas station across the road and a tire service center, and then some outlying farmland and single-family residential properties. This is a view of the parcel 332-232 from Old Maplehurst Road. It's an existing farmland right now. And another view looking south from Burgaw Highway at parcel 332-234. It's an existing wooded lot with an old single-family residence. Looking at our district comparison, the existing RA district, as we mentioned before, that's primarily designed for low-density residential and agricultural type uses with a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet, no maximum density, and 152 uses, and many of those being non-residential in nature, kind of a community business type uses supporting existing residential and agricultural type uses. And this being a conditional zoning, the applicant has actually made modifications to the list of allowed uses. They've gone in and scaled that use or that list down to 134 uses and factored out many of the uses that would have potentially adverse effects on adjacent properties. They've also proposed a list of conditions to minimize or mitigate potential impacts on adjacent residential properties. And a few of those uses deal with buffering and landscaping and really specify that along any adjacent residential properties, you would have opaque fences and enhanced landscaping. Also along both Burgaw Highway and Old Maplehurst Road, you would have additional landscaping put in place to enhance the appearance of the property. You would have landscaping dispersed throughout the parking area and your parking islands. And also to the west, where we have the existing stream and some of the existing farmland, there's a existing stand of trees that's there right now, and those would also remain in place as part of the conditions. Then the other is with the architectural design standards. And one thing that we work with the applicant is to try to ensure, with this being a high-profile location along Burgaw Highway, that we would have a site that's architecturally pleasing for passersby. So one, we had the enhanced landscaping, and two, the incorporation of various architectural features into the building design to ensure that it is a more upscale type development. Here's a look at the conceptual site plan, and as you'll notice, it is phased, with phase one building being the building that's fronting on Burgaw Highway, and kind of working in a clockwise motion. We have a phase two, phase three, and phase four buildings as the need would arise. The property would take access from NC Highway 53 with one access point, and then two access points off Old Maplehurst Road, one of those for commercial traffic and one of those for service trucks making deliveries. I have two stormwater detention ponds, and as you can see along both Highway 53 and Old Maplehurst, the circles that we have right there, some of the enhanced landscaping that's being proposed for the site. And then along the south, we have the opaque fence with the enhanced screening and buffering adjacent to the residential properties. As we look at the future land use map, once again, this area is the community growth area. And so the highway business as a standalone district is not listed as a compatible zoning district. However, this is a conditional zoning. So this is a newly created highway business conditional zoning district for this parcel. And even though the district is not listed as a corresponding district, the conditions that have been proposed and also the location of this as a commercial node are consistent with the policies and recommendations contained within the land use plan. The land use plan does recommend the presence of commercial nodes along major corridors at primary intersections, and that would be considered this location at Old Maplehurst and Burgaw Highway. The proposed rezoning is considered reasonable and in the public interest based upon the existing zoning and land uses at this intersection, as well as the conditions that have been proposed to mitigate any foreseeable future impacts. And based upon the comprehensive plan's guiding principles, the location of the rezoning, the existing land uses, and the mitigating conditions, staff does recommend approval of the rezoning request. Additionally, the planning board has voted unanimously to recommend approval of the rezoning request. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hudson for the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. At this time, I'll open the public hearing on LCZ 2016-14. First, I'll make a call to the audience. Is there an applicant representative here this evening? If you would like, please come forward. Please state your name and your relationship to the applicant.
John Parker, 306 New Bridge Street. I'm the planning consultant for Mr. Morton. Obviously, from Mr. Warren's presentation, you can see that there were lots of conditions that were placed on this. We call it Stallion Crossing, and if you looked at the full-scale drawing in the bottom right corner of the drawing, you see that term. Mr. Morton wanted to complement the Southwest High School mascot, and he wanted to theme his development with that name, and that's the reason that we call it Stallion Crossing. This is an area of Onslow County that has been gradually changing over the last several years. Secondary commercial node would be appropriate at this location. When we first applied for this, we did not apply as a conditional zoning, but Ben and his staff thought that conditional zoning would be more appropriate so that the conditions that he went over, and I won't go through all of those in detail, but so that those conditions could be applied so that we can make sure that this particular development, when it's developed, would be appropriate for the area. We would restrict the location of the driveway access points, that the buildings would be oriented in a manner that they would be acceptable for the neighborhood and for the traffic, that we would provide the appropriate buffers and all of those things. And you can do that under the conditional zoning and enforce it, but you can't do it under the straight zoning, and that's why we are using the conditional zoning. We believe that in 2016, in the year 2016, that this is not property that is reasonably usable for agricultural use or for homes. I wouldn't want to live here if we wanted to develop this as a residential development, and many other people wouldn't. It's more appropriate for commercial use. To point out the phases, to emphasize those, this is not something that Mr. Morton plans to go in and build all of this at one time. He would start with the one commercial building fronting on 53, followed by a second commercial building that would be nearest to Maplehurst, and then move inland from there. So it would be phased over a period of time. We believe that we've placed a lot of conditions that really make this a very nice project. And when you look at those, you see a very lot of good conditions, especially the architectural condition that was added at the last. And I think that came from Mr. Warren himself. We were happy to agree to those conditions. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have after the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. There are no other individuals that have signed up for LCZ 2016-14. Are there any members of the audience that would like to speak during this public hearing? Once again, if there are any members of the audience, please come forward at this time to the podium. With no one else signing up and no members of the audience coming forward to speak, the public hearing is hereby closed. This item is available for commissioner discussion and possible decision.
Approve your zoning.
Second.
Mr. Parker, could you come back up, please?
Yes, ma'am.
John, I'm curious, several of the conditions, and there are quite a few of them, were they at the behest of the residents in the area, or were they self-inflicted?
They actually were worked out between us and the county. None of those conditions came from the neighbors.
Okay. Was there any contact with neighbors or any input?
My understanding was that there were a couple of people at the planning board meeting, but I was not there.
Okay.
Mr. Morton did go to the neighbors that are immediately on, bordering on Maplehurst Road. They've been using this for pasture land. And he agreed to allow those people to continue to use any part of the property for pasture land until he actually moves in to develop. And building that first building on Highway 53 allows them to continue to use the majority of the property until he moves to the other areas.
Okay. Are there any further questions for anyone, Mr. Parker, or any other? Hearing none. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Passes unanimously.
The next item is item 6, general item, Zika virus mosquito control funding. Presenting is Ms. Angela Lee, our Health Director, and Mr. Tony Padgett, Environmental Services Director. Director Lee and Padgett, please come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, Mr. Hudson, good evening. Onslow County was one of 17 counties requested to participate in a mosquito survey and surveillance project. In consultation with both Onslow County Environmental Services and Camp Lejeune Vector Services, it was determined that in conclusion that the project would benefit our community. Onslow County was selected as a county that represented a fair geographic cross-section in North Carolina, was one of few counties that continued with their mosquito management and surveillance capacity, which will assist in timelier data collection and offers an opportunity as well for collaboration with their military installation. The surveys are designed to determine the potential local risk for transmission of Zika and will allow for the gathering of baseline data on the presence of disease-carrying population of mosquitoes in Onslow County. The data collected will be used in the development of a statewide surveillance program. The purpose of the agreement that's in front of you, or that we're asking you to consider, is one that will allow the health department to purchase equipment and supplies on behalf of environmental services to conduct survey activities in Onslow County. These funds are required to be expended during this fiscal year. We respectfully request approval to accept the additional Zika virus mosquito control funds in the amount of $2,941. Mr. Padgett and I are available to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. What's the board's pleasure?
So moved.
Second. Questions? I'll ask Mr. Padgett a question. Tony, when you collect these mosquitoes, are you familiar with what the data that you are to obtain is, how to go about doing this?
Yes, ma'am. We collect, this is not our first year, we've been collecting them for years, but we ID those mosquitoes and we put it in a database, and we stay in contact with the state on letting them know what we have here.
Okay.
So this worked perfect for us and our partnership and health department, and when we went on the base and met with them, they were ecstatic about how we were doing our collection and how we were IDing and keeping up with things. And it's so important with the Zika virus moving through the state that we do that. And they said, yes, it's great. But we do have the data. We keep it. I have data from, matter of fact, from the last 4 years on what specific mosquito we collect, and we ID each and every one of them.
So if I understand correctly, there's just one specific type of mosquito that actually carries the Zika, but we have several other breeds of mosquitoes. Is that correct?
That's correct, but we do have two. The Egypti and Asian tiger also is a carrier. And as far as the Egypti, we have very little Egypti in Onslow County and eastern North Carolina. But now Asian tiger, we have a load. So it's so important that we get this grant, and we buy new light traps, more up-to-date light traps, which helps us in surveillance so much better. And we have communication with the state that they're eager to. If we have something that we're not sure of, we can send it to the state and have a response within 24 to 36 hours.
Ms. Lee, if you're bit by one of these mosquitoes, are you automatically infected, or is not all mosquitoes carry the virus?
Definitely not all mosquitoes carry the virus. And again, this is really only a concern for our pregnant women. That's who we're concerned about, is our pregnant women. And again, what we've seen here in North Carolina, we have currently 9 cases in North Carolina that we've seen from travel, and 346 in the United States. So it's really a concern for that population. And again, we've given information out to our doctors and continue to have travel advisories for that population.
Well, I don't really want our citizens, I mean, summer's beginning, and I don't want them all, every time they get bit by a mosquito, to immediately think they're coming down with this virus. So is there some words of encouragement that you can give that the likelihood of getting the virus, just because we're conducting this study, doesn't necessarily mean that we're infected?
I like to answer that. This is true because we had real depth discussion on the base with this. Us being military and bless their hearts for looking out for us on our soils, they're going to be the host more than likely because they're overseas. Mm-hmm. They come back. You got to have the host, and that mosquito's got to bite that host, and then it will carry over. And so it's not major alarming, but we are trying to be proactive, and Onslow County is very fortunate to keep up with their vector program. A lot of counties have done away with them, and so we're being very proactive and keeping on top and not let the citizens be alarmed. I mean, you're going to get bit. I mean, there's several different species of mosquitoes, so everyone is not a carrier. Asian tiger is, Egypti is. Some of the others are not, So just because you get bit by a mosquito don't mean you have Zika. Okay. And to Ms. Lee's comment, the pregnant women, I mean, if you see the pictures of these pregnant women that have Zika and the baby's heads are very small, it's very saddening. And we just want to be very proactive. And if we do have a case, I can assure you, vector control will take appropriate action immediately.
Great. Any further questions?
Tony, you still have chickens scattered around in this county?
No, sir. The state done away with those.
Get away with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
How about it seemed like when I was out this weekend at some of the stores, I seen some mosquito traps that some of the stores are got. Are they effective or just gimmicks? Or?
No, I'm not going to say they're gimmicks. They're effective if you're standing right beside them and within 5 or 10 foot. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you're sitting on your porch, screened-in porch, yeah, it's probably nice to have. We have got into very big on barrier spray, and depending on the type of mosquito we could collect and how aggressive they are, which is Asian tiger is what you're going to find around your home. They're container breeders, and they're one of the ones that carries the Zika virus. And so we try to make sure people tip and toss, get that water out of the way, change your animals' water constantly, because it's hard to believe, but one cap full of water, a bottle cap full, will raise 200 mosquitoes. I mean, it's how quick it happens, and then every 7 to 10 days, you got a brood coming off. So anytime we can stop that brood, then we're better off.
Wasn't you said too about, one time you and I had a conversation about putting a drop of vegetable oil or cooking oil on the
That's
open-
right. We have a lot of
container of
folk-
water that you have to keep for watering purpose.
Yeah, a lot of folks are, doing, trying to save water and doing their citrons, and they don't realize if you don't put a screen on it, you've got a hatchery for mosquitoes. But you can take one cap full of cooking oil and pour in there. It don't hurt your plants, and that mosquito, as long as that larvae can't get through to get air, he cannot make it. And that's so important.
Okay, great. Anything further? I have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Please come back during the summer and give us an update on how things are looking, Tony.
Okay, we'll be glad to. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Item 6B is construction contract approval for Phase 4 expansion of the Meadowview Road landfill. Mr. Scott Boss is available to present this item and answer questions of the board. And before Mr. Boss speaks, I would like to say, regarding this issue, one of the very first things that was studied when I came on board with the county was whether or not Onslow County should have a transfer station or continue its landfill. And the county at that time was being lobbied heavily, I believe, by some individuals or some companies that was pushing for a transfer station. The difference being a transfer station would take Onslow County's trash and move it out of the county to a major regional landfill. The alternative would be to continue expansion of the existing Onslow County landfill, which was the course following the study that the Board of Commissioners chose. And now I believe this is kind of the fruition of some of those early choices in 2009 and 2010. When a transfer station is put into place, you give up control of where the trash goes and how much it costs to dispose of it, because you're paying a fee to another outside company, a large company outside of Onslow County. So Mr. Boss is reporting not only on what's happening in the next 5.5 years, but beyond.
The next 25 years, exactly. Madam Chairman, Commissioners, good evening. As Mr. Hudson said, in order to ensure long-term disposal capacity for the county, we developed a multi-phase expansion plan for the Meadowview Road landfill. This plan starts with Phase 4, as you can see there. It continues through Phase 9. These 6 phases will provide capacity for a minimum of 25 years, and we're very lucky here in Onslow County to have a landfill like this. Most counties in the state are not this fortunate. They do transfer it out, and it's very expensive. For instance, I came from Greensboro down here 6 years ago, and we went to a transfer station, and our costs went from making $5 million a year to paying $17 million a year. And that's what happens with a transfer station. Now it's necessary to begin the construction of Phase 4 of the expansion plan. This phase includes the construction of the 10-acre cell, which is Phase 4 there. This phase will contain enough disposal capacity for at least 5.5 years. At the same time, we're going to try to reduce our cost in the future for construction. You see Phase 5, 6, and 7, we're going to go ahead and build the subgrade for that now while we're paying for dirt at $2016 instead of $2021. So that's what that's going to involve. And that will get us through Phase 5, 6, and 7. On top of that is Phases 8 and 9. There will be no expansion costs, no construction costs, because that waste will go on top of Phase 5, 6, and 7 and will join the existing landfill. We've already obtained all necessary permits and approvals through a DENR and also the Army Corps of Engineers. And of course, this is paid for from the Solid Waste Fund, no tax dollars for this. Any questions?
Well, let me get a motion on the floor. Second? Okay. We're open for discussion now. Scott, I know back in '09, when we talked about this, we looked at long-term and the cost of what, of course, we had no idea what the cost of shipping our trash would be in this year. Or have our projections been pretty accurate as far as the cost? I know it was very costly getting those permits to move forward.
Yes, ma'am, we're right on target, doing very well. And of course, we're continuing to do everything we can daily to lengthen what we have. We treat that as an asset, and we're trying to be good stewards, from using the alternative cover, the posi shell, to getting much higher compaction rates. Right now, we're running about 1,450 pounds per cubic yard, which is one of the highest in the state. So we're doing everything we can to lengthen what we have.
Well, I know with the new compaction equipment and some new processes that are taking place, I was hoping that we would hear that the projection of those dates back in 9 and 10, that we have expanded those dates and that the existing is going to last us a few years longer because of the compaction and the efforts that you're making to utilize that space.
It has, and also the recycling efforts throughout the county. And we went from 800 tons a month to 4,000 tons a month, and that's increased the lifespan as well, too. So we're probably 2 years past where we have projected construction back when I got here.
Okay. So if we hadn't have taken those steps back in 9 and 10, we would be not looking at this project today. We would have been looking at it the last 2 years.
Absolutely, you're correct.
Okay. Okay. Anything further for Scott? The only thing, is our tipping fees still being in a reasonable, competitive price?
I look at it every month, and especially during budget season, we have no intention of raising it. It's a very competitive, it's taking care of what we need to do out there. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And there's plenty of money in the enterprise fund to accommodate these motions and these phases that we're going through?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Sounds great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thanks for the work you do, Scott.
Item C is budget items for commissioner consideration. I'll be presenting this item to the board. The item consists of 5 separate parts. Parts 1 and 2 are reporting only. Parts 3, 4, and 5 have possible commissioner decisions attached. Item number 1 is the public education funding formula. And by the way, all 5 of these items arise from the Board of Commissioners' recent workshop on the budget, as the board was considering the initial request from all parties, both inside and outside county government. Under item number 1, the public education funding formula, per the board's direction, the proposed fiscal year 17 budget will include fully funding the county's investment in public education at the formula computed level of approximately $46.7 million for the local current expense fund and $3 million for the local capital expense fund. And there's no action required by the board. That's taken per the past interlocal agreement between the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education. And I'm just letting you know that we're proceeding with that in the budget. The county government employee market adjustment, per the board's direction, the proposed fiscal year 17 budget will include fully funding the remainder of the county employee market analysis that seeks to bring county employee pay to competitive levels. Not all county employees, as you know, have been studied under the market study. So this would take the rest of the employees that have not been studied yet. The cost would be approximately $2.4 million for the general fund departments and $180,000 for enterprise fund departments, such as Mr. Boston and Solid Waste and in the airport. Item 3 is moving the evidence storage room within the Justice Complex. The Sheriff's Office obtained a quote of about $120,000 to move the evidence storage room to a safer location. We are actually proposing that the Commissioners consider right now moving that with a direct appropriation from the Capital Reserve Fund of the General Government Capital Reserve Fund, not the Public Education Capital Reserve Fund, because we have 2. So this would be, we're estimating, if they said $120,000, just considering the way things have gone with the jail, we are budgeting at $150,000, and that's actually what we asked our financiers. Now, that's not the actual cost of moving it, but we're estimating that if we have 120 as an estimate, there might be some things we don't know about, and so to have leeway to go up to $150,000. So the possible motion of the board would be to direct the evidence room be moved immediately, and that's not waiting until July 1. That would be happening immediately. And that the move be made directly from the General Government Capital Reserve Fund and authorize the county manager and the chairman to sign necessary financial documents. And so that item would be up for consideration by the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the amount not to exceed $150,000. And is that a second?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, Commissioners. Item 4 is a review of legal services. Specifically mentioned by the board was the legal department. One option of the board is to retain in-house legal function, in which case no motion is necessary, or if the board wishes to outsource legal functions, motion would be to move from an in-house county attorney position to a county attorney on retainer. It should be noted that if that happens, we would need to come back to the board at the next county commissioners meeting with a recommendation for an interim county attorney on retainer. That need not be the permanent county attorney on retainer, but the statute does say that the county shall have a county attorney. Whether that's in-house or on retainer is a decision made by the Board of Commissioners.
What's the board's pleasure?
I move that we immediately move from in-house county attorney position to county attorney retainer.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Any discussion? I will say that there has been some consideration and some thought put towards this move and the cost that it will incur. And in full disclosure, there is a contract, and the contract will have to be honored, which will be a cost that will be borne by the budget. And I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1.
Item 5 is additional budget cuts. The county budget team has identified 16 positions within different departments of county government that could be the recipient of a reduction in force or subject to a reduction in force without affecting protection to life, property, overall government mission. I would like to point out that 4 of the 16 positions pending the item above were within the legal department. So therefore, there would be 12 additional positions. Should the commissioners choose to do so, I would perform a reduction in force on the 16 county government positions with actually the prior motion would actually handle one of those because one of those is the county attorney position. The county attorney position does not fall within the personnel policy. The county attorney works directly for the Board of Commissioners and not for county administration. So the other 3 positions within the legal department would be subject to the RIF action. The motion would be to authorize the county manager to perform a reduction in force on 16 county government positions in accordance with county policy. If you count the county attorney position as already having been RIF'd, then that would be 15 county positions.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Passes 4-1.
Madam Chair, members of the board, regarding the item that you've just undertaken, we have intentionally not released the position titles in this agenda or in the media. We would notify the county departments tomorrow and the individuals affected We believe that it's not appropriate for anyone to read in a newspaper or hear on television or anywhere else what would be happening. So now, following the action of the board, we will notify on an individual basis individual employees.
Thank you.
That concludes item 6. Madam Chair, item 7 would be next.
Okay. We had nothing off the consent agenda. Public comment? This is the 5-minute public comment.
Yes, Madam Chair. This is the second public comment period. During the second public comment period, there's a 5-minute time limit. In accordance with the board's rules of procedure, commissioners shall reserve responses, if any, for the commissioner comment period at the end of the agenda. Citizens shall have the opportunity to talk about any issue upon which the Board of Commissioners have control. The individual that signed up to speak this evening during the second public comment period is Mr. Kevin O'Connor of 210 Newport Drive, Jacksonville. Mr. O'Connor, you have the podium for a time period not to exceed 5 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Kevin O'Connor, 210 Newport Drive. I'm not really too sure where to start. I'm going to start with the Sheriff's Department. Does this board think that 9.5-minute average response time for the Sheriff's Department is an adequate response time? Yes or no question. Do you think that the
Mr.
lack of-
O'Connor, the board reserves comment to commissioner comment.
Yes, ma'am, I fully understand that, and I'm still going to ask the yes or no questions. And that should give me an additional 10 seconds past my response times, because you know how I work. If we go back to the fact that this board had to request some assistance from Swansboro in order to support one of the volunteer fire departments, my next question is do you think that public safety is the main function of government? 9.5-minute average response time is this 5-minute response time plus another one minus 30 seconds. I personally think that stinks. However, it used to be 13 minutes. So my question as far as the mentality is concerned is how is it that we have 2 former law enforcement officers and we have a former paid employee by the Onslow County Sheriff's Department that they didn't know this whatever the number of years ago was. So when I look at this budget and I go $1.7 million in order to fix the air conditioning for the jail, we got the 800 megahertz in which you're paying nothing but interest right now, which you're going to have to pay the principal now in a couple of years. We look at the Onslow County Employment Market Adjustment, which in my personal opinion goes back to the sales tax distribution a few years ago, which goes back up over to here, in which the board directed that there be no tax increase and that the county's fund balance not be lowered to an unsafe amount to balance the budget, in which I addressed this in previous board meetings. Then we flip the page and we go over to the review of legal services, in which basically this goes back to the $1.7 million for the jail, because you're either going to shell out the $1.7 million up front plus the legal services and then go to court in order to get the money back, or you're going to go to the architect or the HVAC contractor in order to get them to fix it, in which they're going to tell you to go pound sand, which means you have to fix it and then go to the legal side of the house in order to fix this. Now, over the course of my research, in which this board is fully aware that I do a bunch of research, I don't basically come in here and voice my opinion for the sake of voicing my opinion. I've contacted this board, I've contacted Ms. Wand, I've contacted Mr. Hudson in regards to some of this subject. When I was going back and trying to adjust the jail, because I was trying to find the comments as far as the jail was concerned, where the jail, which we had talked about, several of us had talked about, in which the jail was supposed to supposedly pay for itself. Couldn't find that, which of course just got underneath my skin. But over the course of that research, I found some very, very interesting information. I found some information in which, for instance, Mr. Buchanan clearly stated that he was for the per capita method of sales tax distribution. I also found a very, very interesting, and this goes to the mentality of this board, in which it comes down to looking into the future, in which this board is not doing. And it goes back to Lionel Midget. God bless him. And back in 2007, he clearly stated, and he is the only person that had it right, we cannot continue to provide the type of services that we need to provide at the tax rate at which we're doing it. You go back to Onslow County Schools. Onslow County Schools, they're growing at 300 students every single year, and it's not military. Where do you want it to start? I consider myself an informed taxpayer. And the biggest problem that this board has is you're so concerned about cutting this budget down. You're so concerned, got to cut the budget, got to cut the budget. You are in the business of growing this county. This county is growing. Me personally, I think 9.5 minutes for the sheriff's department, in which he asked for 24 and whatever the numbers was. It doesn't make any difference. It's the concept. That's what this board and the future board has to look at, the growth of this county and what services they need to provide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. Are there any further?
No, ma'am, there are no further speakers signed up during the second public comment period.
Okay. This time, we'll move into the manager's comments.
Madam Chair, just one thing to highlight this evening. This past week, 43 clerks from the Association of County Clerks attended their 29th annual conference, and Onslow County government was pleased to host that. This is one way that this facility that we're in this evening has benefited. Those 43 clerks from across the state, as far away as Transylvania, Buncombe, and Yancey County in the mountains, they came here with friends, family, for the conference. They stayed 4 nights in our hotels. They ate out. They bought gas. I hope they left a lot of sales tax money with us. And as a side note, we also would like to say that we were well represented by Ms. Julie Wand, our clerk to the board, and Ms. Heather Norris, who helped organize the event with all the staff of county administration and the governing body. Ms. Julie Wand was sworn in as a director of the North Carolina Association of County Clerks on Saturday evening while they were here at the Onslow County Government Center. So I'd just like to highlight that we have a newly elected distinguished person in that of Ms. Julie Wand. And it's just a good way that we can use this public facility for an association that the government is part of to bring travel and tourism here to Onslow County. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. We'll move towards commissioner comments. Mr. Bright, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to convey my condolences to our Finance Director, David McCole. He lost his mother just recently, and our hearts and prayers goes out for you and your family, sir. Also, we had another icon that passed away, I think yesterday, John Drew Warlick's wife, prominent attorney of Jacksonville, longtime, lifetime resident. His wife, he lost his wife yesterday. And also, congratulations, Julie, for your appointment and your election in the clerks conference. Other than that, thank you. Have a safe trip home.
Thank you, Mr. Bright. Ms. Williams?
I don't have any comments.
Mr. Jarman?
None tonight.
Vice Chair?
Jack said most of it. We lost some very important people that we've known very close to us that we've dealt with over the years. And John Drew's wife, and I've dealt with her on several occasions, an outstanding lady. She'll be well missed. And Julie, congratulations. And the clerks that were here were very praising of you and Heather, both of you. And the letter that you got today was an outstanding letter, even though I couldn't open it on my iPad, but she read it to me. I sent it to Julie, and she was able to open it up. But congratulations. And everybody have a safe trip home. Thank you.
I would also, since we're doing the obituaries tonight, I would like to pass my sympathy to Mr. Jarman, who lost his brother-in-law, his sister's husband. So my sympathy, WC. No further. Can I have a motion to adjourn? A second? All in favor? We're adjourned.